through some of the reasons why you might set up these structures. So as I said, sole traders, micro businesses, generally maybe just start up businesses where you want no costs and just to see how it works, get a concept design, and then move on to the next structure. A partnership is generally only when you've got multiple people that are going to own one idea or one asset. So you'll bring people together and say, hey, we're going to do this thing, let's go through. I mean, Facebook was a good example of that. There was a partnership of 4 people that went and contributed these things, and then had a huge falling out about what their contributions were. Companies. Companies are, as I said, most favoured because it provides that limited liability. You can put your business risk in one entity or multiple entities and minimise the risk to obviously personal assets, but then the business assets themselves and segregate them. So as you develop your business over time, you'll have new ideas and new products, and you'll make a determination, is this product more risky than the last one that I've launched? If it is, you probably have another company to segregate those risks out. Tax advantages, and if you're looking to attract private equity, this is when you want that structure. Trusts generally hold capital assets. So we're not talking about IP most of the time, so a lot of the IP isn't a capital appreciating asset. We're talking about property in most cases where, say you become very successful and you buy this innovation center and say, hey, we're going to own this and develop more businesses and make more money for ourselves. You buy this place in a trust because when you eventually sell it, any capital gain is discountable, which just means that instead of paying 30% tax as you would in a company, you'll pay roughly about 23.25%. Estate planning too, as I said, you've got to be very careful about who you appoint as your controllers, but there's also very advantages if you want to take that risk. And we use this, I would say commonly, but we do use this as a tool. For example, if my wife, and I love her, she's fantastic, but if I wasn't so comfortable with that, my trust would be with my sister. My sister and I would be trustees, and if anything happened and she left me for whatever reason, generally the courts would sit there and say, well, what are you worth? They don't care about the fact that the trust doesn't form part of your estate. They sit there and say, well, you control that trust, give her half of everything that you've got to. If I don't control the trust, if I can't unilaterally go over that trust and say, well, we're going to do this, the courts find it very hard to go and say, well, this is what's going to happen. So my wife might leave me and sue me and say, well, I want all your assets in your trust, and the courts might protect me there and say, well, no, you can't do that because your sister can say no to you, so sorry, just take his house and be survived. Live with that. Personal services income, I don't want to really go through this, but I just wanted to touch, this seems a very common misconception in all flooded businesses. They start up a company and then they just pay a flat corporate tax rate of 30% and leave the money in the company. The tax office also hate that. If you start up a company and the only reason the company is generating income is because of your personal efforts, effectively the company has to pay a wage to you of those profits. The tax office don't let you income split and just achieve a lower tax rate by incorporating an entity or business. When it's a business, when you have employees, absolutely, but where it's just you earning that money, and there's some rules around how they determine that, you have to go out and have a look and say, well, is it really me or is it a business model here that's generating income? If it's just you, you've got to pay tax at your own marginal rate. They're very, very poor still at catching this, but I wouldn't want to be doing this in the long term and having to take that risk. Business structures. So what generally happens is people start as a sole trader. You haven't seen your account, you've got a business idea. You start, and most businesses start well and truly before they have an idea of what the business is. It might be simply that you like writing code and you've written a whole lot of stuff and you've got through and you've gone, well, hold on, I'm doing this for free, I can actually make some money now. So when you get to that point and money's like to trickle in, people sit there and go, well, hold on, I'm paying 46.5% tax on every dollar I'm earning. There must be a better way. And generally at that point, we meet a lot of clients and say, okay, well, what are you trying to do? Any business that you have, when you sell a business, you have to pay tax. There's a taxing point when a business entity moves from myself. If I sold it to one of you, there's a tax that I have to pay to the government. If I sell it from myself to a trust, there's a tax because the tax office says, well, you've disposed of the interest. I don't care that you still own it and control it. We want to get our share of that. And then when the trust owner sells it again, we'll take the tax on the uplift value that you sold it for. There are ways to get around that though. And how you do that really depends on what you're trying to achieve. The Section 122 rollover is just a rollover that talks about, hey, I own the asset personally and I want to put it into a company. And the tax office have a specific process that says, well, if you want to do that, well, we understand that in a company structure, you still own 100% of the asset. And as I said before, our company has shares, so you're exchanging 100% physical, tangible asset in your own personal name for a company that you acquire 100% of the issued capital. When that happens, the tax office looks through the arrangement and says, well, in effect, you still own the asset. Yes, it's in a company structure, but you've still got absolute entitlement to that property. If you follow this process, we won't tax you when you dispose of that asset. So it's a good way to take a small business that's grown into something. I would say the majority of businesses that we see at this point in time are probably worth about $250,000 when you go and get a valuation, and you have to have that. And you lose half that in tax. In this way, you pay zero. That only works for a company because a trust, as I said, you don't have definite ownership in it. So if you were to sell it to a trust, you'd have to pay the tax. But we do this as step one into a company, and then we have a look at, hey, I want to trust ownership of the entity. Once I've got the business transferred into a company and I own that company, I can go and transfer the shares in the company to a trust or another entity or a partnership, whatever I want to do under what they call a Section 152 rollover. And there's, again, a process and procedures about how you do that, but again, it's tax-free. I'll give you an example. We try to do this for, we try to help out a lot of small business clients about this. When you get to a certain size, and I use the 4 million example with a couple of partners, we have a look to see, is the company ownership the best structure at this point in time? And generally not, because a company, as I said, you've got a fixed entitlement to it, you generate lots of profits, you're paying 30% on everything, but you're the sole owner, or you and your friend are the sole owners of that company. When the profits come out, you're going to be paying 46.5% of tax on that. So what we want to do is get a broader range of beneficiaries so we can minimise the tax liability for all the owners of the business. So in this, if we said the value of the company is worth $4 million, each partner generally makes a $2 million capital gain on the disposal of that business. This normal general discount is entitled that everyone gets that. You go and buy a share on the market, as long as you hold it for 12 months, you're entitled to 50% discount on your capital gain. These concessions, these small business concessions, say if you've got a small business running, again, there's rules to figure out whether or not you are a small business. If you can pass these eligibility criteria, hey, we'll give you that 50% that everyone's entitled to, then we'll give you another 50%. So effectively you get 75% off the gain. Then you get to this point and say, well, okay, that's great, but after $4 million, I've still got a $1 million capital gain here, $500,000 for each of the owners to pay with. There's a few exemptions. There's one, you can go and buy another asset and don't pay the tax and defer it to later. Or the one that we really like to use is super. You can put $500,000 into super, and I think everyone in this room is too young to try to do that. But super is a fantastic asset, a fantastic way to build assets. And once you put the money into super, it goes in tax-free. So you keep your $500,000. It's one of the only times in your lifetime that you can actually put more into super than those $25,000 caps that the government have been at this point in time. And then the super fund can go and buy assets. And for example, if it goes and buys this premises, which I'm sure is worth more than $500,000, if it came and buy the premises though, I mean, all the rent that it earns, and you let the market decide what that rent is, pays tax at 15% instead of 46.5% that we individuals pay. So if you're looking for a long-term wealth solution, this is something that you really need to consider. One of the best things about the restructure and all these parts is it lets you access some of the money of the business. As I said, what we've done is we've taken the business from yourself, you've locked it up, you've created some value, you sell it to a company. As if you sold it to somebody else, that company needs to pay you for that amount. So if the bank will agree with you that the value of the business is what it is, you can go to the bank and say, hey, I want to borrow $250,000 to pay myself for this business part. Then, as I said, if we go to the trust, we've sold the trust now, we've sold it to the business for $4 million. I mean, the bank won't lend you all of that, they'll want you to keep some risk. But again, you can access money by saying, if you had a $500,000 home loan, for example, you can go to the bank and say, hey, the trust owns this business asset, give me $500,000 so you can pay me for my share of the business. You can take that money through to yourself, pay it for your personal mortgage. So instead of having $500,000 of private debt sitting there that benefits you in no way whatsoever, these restructures give you an opportunity to convert all of that debt into tax-deductible debt. So effectively, you're saving 30% off your interest cost every year because you'll get a tax deduction in the future for all the interest that you're otherwise just giving to the bank with no benefit. As I said, superannuation parts, access to tax-free monies. I mean, we're saying what we're getting here is a $4 million capital gain free that you won't get at any other point in time. If you miss these concessions, well, when you sell that eventually, that $4 million fully gets crystallized and you pay at least $1 million of tax on that. So once in a lifetime opportunity to save $1 million. Every small business should try these things. And look, the CGT concessions are very, very onerous, so don't find someone that you can trust and talk to them about how you do it. The tax office automatically review every return that goes through with these concessions, so you just want to make sure that you get it right. Even we get it wrong sometimes. I mean, we've seen some pretty ludicrous claims from the tax office, and you've just got to be very, very careful about how you structure